Welcome back to Looking for Work. I think we are live. I'm just going to check real quick. And then hopefully everybody's doing well. Looking forward to this week. And I did get a couple questions via email, so I'll cover those. We do this every week, 12 o'clock Pacific, except for last week. So every once in a while, I have a board meeting that I have to attend. So rather than making the 16 other board members adjust their schedule, every once in a while we go a little earlier. So I'll try and keep everybody updated when that happens. But yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing questions and taking this time to just sort of take my best stab at helping folks that are looking for your first job in tech. I've hired lots of folks and I've helped way more folks transition into, well, maybe not as many folks. I don't know, it's weird math to do. But I've had a pretty long career and hired lots of folks, but also helped people get into pretty decent sized organizations you might have heard of in the past. So that said, best way to get a question to me is just drop it in the chat as the questions come through, or your comments. I'll say what's up, all those great things. But more importantly, I'll try and give you my best and most useful and thoughtful response based on my experience, which is often shaped with a little bit more of a lens of seeing what has worked for people in the past and what's been not so effective. I've seen a lot more of that. But this process is super doable. So if anybody's out there thinking about making a transition into a tech career, there's lots of different paths to gain the skills that you need. And then there's plenty of opportunity, but it is exceedingly tough. So I hear lots of people say that everybody's looking for a senior and it's hard to find a job. It's hard to get your first job without experience. How do you get experience without a job? All those kinds of things. So more than happy to dive deeper into that. But just so you know, it gets much easier after the first one, right? So this is only the process that you typically have to do your first time. And then after that, it's all downhill, as we say in cycling, right? It's a bit of a climb to get to the top of the mountain. But once you're there, it's all downhill. Yeah, so I'm going to jump in and check I had a couple questions come through via email. I vaguely remember one of them, and it had to do with getting a degree in computer science. I guess I'll just start with that one. And then let me just pull up the other one, and I can see if I can find it really quickly. So oftentimes, I think people expect me to be anti-computer science, and they're like, "Oh, you're the JavaScript guy. You probably hate CS degree." And it's like, not really. I think it's the right path for some folks, but not the right path for everyone. And it certainly was not the best path for me. I was not a great student in the tail end of high school / beginning of college. And so I was on the 10-year plan. Took me a lot longer to get my degree than it should have, maybe, for the average person. But that's largely because I just was not super focused at the time, and it wasn't something that made a lot of sense to me. Like, why I'd have to go through 2 years of these courses that didn't make sense for me to find and discover what did and was relevant and what was going to help me land a career. And for a variety of reasons, it's just a real challenge for a lot of folks. That said, I do think there's a lot of value in the actual study and what you learn in a CS program, but I feel like there's different paths. And so it might be best for an individual to basically maybe wait and do it when they can afford, maybe pay cash. And you could do it like one class a month through like National University. Lots of other schools are creating online programs. So then you might have the potential of being able to use company stipend. The company may have some funds available for you to do continuing education. So lots of great avenues. And I would say I wouldn't discourage anybody from getting a degree in computer science. I would just say you should be prepared for what that experience will be like. And it might be different than an experience if you either teach yourself how to code or go to a coding boot camp or you participate in an apprenticeship program. All valid methods. It's really which one is going to be the right fit for you and your unique place right now in time, and what's going to make the most sense in terms of making you successful. What's the best fit, right? Like, we all have maybe slightly different ways that we learn efficiently. There may be a better path for you, and I don't think anything wrong with choosing the path that leads to the best chance of you being successful. That's really all it is. It's a numbers game. Chris Gardner, great dude, talks about the numbers game, right? So the Will Smith movie. Those of you have no idea what I'm talking about as far as Chris Gardner. So you basically think of the sales process as just numbers. Same thing with finding a job, it's just numbers. So ultimately getting that initial core set of skills can be achieved through a variety of different mechanisms. It's not just the CS degree or not just a boot camp. That is the prescribed path for success. Any of those can get you the skills that you need. And then the process that you follow to get that first opportunity is largely not determined by that, but instead very consistent. Pretty much the same process is going to work regardless of how you get trained. So I'm not anti-CS degree in any way, shape, or form. In fact, I think it's a perfectly great thing to do if you're willing to, go that route, if that makes sense for you, whether it's initially or it's degree completion over time. So we had a question that came through. Great question here. What is the best MOS certification for a job in tech? Not sure. MOS seems like a military acronym, maybe. I'm not sure. MOS. Microsoft, maybe? Not sure. But here's my take, generally speaking, about certifications, and not this specifically, because I'm not sure what you mean by MOS certification. Rather than focusing on something that's a signal that you've completed a requisite set of knowledge, I would really focus on what are the core skills that companies are hiring for in the area that you'd like to be in. So let's say it's web development. Okay, Microsoft. Okay, so if you were thinking web development, I'd say there's not many universal certifications that are going to help there, but there are some specific ones that could be valuable if you are, for example, interested in building on the ServiceNow platform or the Salesforce platform or the Oracle, any of those. You could say, I'm going to get NetSuite certified as an engineer, and that could give you an advantage over and above just being sort of competent on the core technology or competent in just web development. You could sort of elevate your positioning a little better, but at the end of the day, you still need to be solid with the core skills, and the certification is not going to be sort of the magic ticket. It's really more of like the icing on the case if you already have the experience. So if you don't have any, then you could sort of do a dual track. So the same time you're earning your skills, you're getting some certificates along the way. But I made the mistake of going down this exact route with Microsoft certification. So I became Microsoft Certified Systems Engineer on the Windows 2000 platform. So that dates myself. But so about 20 years ago, I got my Microsoft Certified Systems Engineer. I also got a Cisco certified, A+ certified, a bunch of these other certifications. None of them, zero, resulted in jobs or really like getting me along this career path. To a minor degree, I did get to complete my bachelor's degree by using some of those tests. But beyond that, I think it was not the best use of my time. It wasn't the most efficient path. I could have probably saved all of that time and spent more of the time actually coding, hands on the keyboard, and it could have gotten me further faster. That said, that's for web development. If it was desktop support, and if I wanted to get an entry-level job in desktop support, then you got to get the A+. Even if you know how to take a computer apart, build it back up again, they still want to see it sort of like the recognized standard thing for that particular job role. If it's networking, then it might still be CCNA, the Cisco Certified Network Associate. So you will have to first think about what is the job that you're looking for, and then determine the weight that the certifications have in that space. So for Microsoft Office, you might be thinking, I don't know, maybe that you want to be a cloud practitioner. You want to help people transition to Microsoft 365, right? Or you might want to be doing implementations, be an implementation specialist. Then I would say, awesome, get some hands-on experience doing that type of work, and then couple that with the certification. I think you're in good shape. So I'm sure that they have entry-level certificates that you can use that will just sort of demonstrate that you have the mastery of that. But I wouldn't go after that alone. You really have to marry it with actual hands-on experience doing the work. So, be involved in doing some implementations. It's a great question. And I think it's really important because you hear a lot out in there about certifications and getting certified. And some of those certifications are, again, driven by vendors, right? The vendor has an incentive for them to kind of get you into their ecosystem, and like Microsoft, and get you sort of like working your way through their path. But at the end of the day, you really should be thinking more about, am I seeing this on job requirements? Is the job rec specifically calling this out? And if it's not, I wouldn't do the certification. So I wouldn't just do it based on your like thought that, oh, this will give me a leg up or an advantage. I would literally go to the job recs and see, are any of them saying this is a nice to have? Are any of them saying this is a must? And then sort of weigh the effort involved there. So what about careers in tech sales or UI UX design? So there is not a standardized test that I'm aware of for UX or design. I don't know a lot of people that are sort of climbing through that entry-level product path, but I'm hearing more about it. So I'd love if anybody has any experience, ping me, drop a comment in here and let us know. Not super knowledgeable about the entry-level path for UX, UI, and design, because it's fairly new. And the folks that have been in the space previously tend to come in through, like what I'm hearing from product folks is that they try and hire people that have experience like working on managing programs and managing teams, like working at nonprofits, right? So I would say, yeah, Hannah made a good point here. She said anything in your design portfolio is usually the first thing employers will want to see. And so I agree. They want to see some tangible examples of your experience with UI or user experience and design. And by the way, user experience and user designs are different domains. And so they usually are mentioned kind of together in tandem, but they are really separate disciplines. So when people are hiring for this, they're usually looking for someone that has a user experience background, and that may be completely different than a designer, right? And someone that can do user interface design. So they could be completely different personalities and personas. So that said, I would focus on, on the product side, people want folks that can problem solve and think in ways of like, how do we work well with customers and how do we organize and prioritize things like that. So I don't know that there's any test really there that would be, or certification that would be complementary to that. In sales, they have a variety of different training methodologies. Sandler sales is pretty popular. So you get certified in Sandler, and I'm sure that would help. Having really anything that demonstrates you've completed a sales training program, I think would be a good entry level. And then again, in sales, they just want to know, can you actually do it? So have you worked as a either sales development rep or a sales rep? And if so, what your numbers look like? That's a simple one, because the numbers in that scenario are pretty easy to, there's no fake it till you make it in that scenario. It's like, can you sell? Or is this not something where you are able to kind of pick up the product knowledge and understand a sales process and be able to kind of like follow that? Technical sales is it's an area where there are some programs that are available. There's a great one out of Chicago. So shout out to Shelton Banks over at Rework Training in Chicago. They do a really good job running a sales training program. And so that, I think the quality of the training program may be more substantial and valuable than an actual individual's certificate. Yeah, you could definitely reach out to Travis. Travis is on the interwebs. He went through San Diego Code School, and he does some teaching. He teaches students now as well. So he teaches high school now, which I cannot imagine how they let him around kids, but super nice guy. Any other questions? I feel like those were a good series of questions. And I think very top of mind for folks that are thinking about transitioning and maybe are just in such a big area in IT to navigate with a fire hose worth of information that's out there. So I'd really think about, what is it that you think that you would enjoy doing? Then ask, like, what is that role called? This is what I think I'd like to do. What's a role what does that describe? Or how do you describe that? Because I think when we throw around like front end and back end and software engineer versus developer, people get a little confused and they're not sure. Are those different things all the same? Like, who makes the stuff that goes inside your iPad? Is that the same as the software that runs it? Like a lot there. And that means that there's a lot of paths that you might take to get the skills necessary for those different domains. So feel free to fire away questions if you folks have more about sort of picking that and figuring out like what those job titles look and sound like. Matthew's got a question here. When given an opportunity to introduce myself at a networking meetup, what is the best way to stand out when I identify myself as looking for work, in addition to I'm a recent boosted graduate interested in continuing to master new technologies? Yeah, that's not how I would introduce myself. So I've been in the meetup space now for quite some time. I'm going to move this because it's big enough. It's taking up some of the screen. And I can tell you that it's interesting when you're at a meetup. For example, the JavaScript meetups, almost every meetup we provide an opportunity for people to stand up, introduce themselves, and if they're looking for work or if they have jobs and they're looking for talent, to sort of like make those connections. It's always interesting to see the first person that mentions their school, because after that person, it's not always the first person, but after that person, everyone else just starts pimping their schools. Like, I just graduated from insert name of bootcamp program and it was amazing, and now I'm looking for work. And it's like, awesome. But you don't usually get that with like, the other college programs, right? Or for whatever reason, it's not always the first person. But as soon as the first one does it, everyone else is like, oh, I went to this program. So the first thing I would do is like, don't do that. Don't just like echo what you hear other people say, right? I think what is really interesting and what is intriguing to hiring managers is not just saying that you're a recent grad of a coding boot camp and you enjoy coding in React, but tell us a little bit about what is unique about you, or what did you like? What is the reason why you've made this transition? What did you do before you did this? Just something that is a little more like surprising maybe than what you're hearing, which is a lot of, I went through this program, now I'm looking for work. Please hire me, right? The please hire me part really is just like, hey, I have a background in, industrial design, or I have a background in the restaurant space or retail, and I'm really good with customers, and I've made this transition, and I'm super excited about learning this year. That's way better than like, and I know React and I know Node, right? You know a little bit of them, right? But you've only been doing it for a little while, so that's not nearly as interesting as you saying, I'm super excited about learning more about hooks, because so far React seems very very functional. And so I really want to continue to learn about hooks. Awesome. That's a good intro, right? Rather than talking about what everybody else is saying, which is the school I went to and I'm looking for work and I can do full stack JavaScript and I'm stronger on the front end. Just give us this real substance. Be a little bit vulnerable and say, I struggle with test-driven development, but I want to work on that this year, right? Anything that reveals a little bit more about what you're, as a human, what you're facing, what you're working with, beyond like, I'm struggling to find a job. Because it's going to be everybody. Everybody's going to be struggling to find a job as a junior software engineer. What's unique about your experience is like, well, what was the path that took you here? And you only have a few seconds, so it can't be like your entire life story. We're not asking for a Reader's Digest version either. Just something that is like interesting and a unique quality that you bring to the table, right? Like if I had to do it all over again and I was brand new and I didn't have a lot of experience, I just graduated from a bootcamp program, I would probably mention something about what I'm looking forward to learning over the course of like the next 6 months. And I would mention, and I'm an endurance athlete. I love getting out there and riding my bike. Anybody else here a cyclist? Boom. Because then you're going to make a real deep connection with somebody else, and you can have something interesting to talk about beyond nerding out on JavaScript or whatever else is out there. And that's what you're trying to do when you're networking. You're trying to establish connections, real, meaningful connections with other people that you'd be interested in having conversation. It's not, I'm interested in having a conversation so I can do a favor for this person now so that later on they'll do a favor for me. That's not networking. Networking is how can I add value for other people? Period. What can you do that helps somebody else? Not so that I can get something else in the future. That's the wrong reason. What else? These are great questions today. This is making the process way easier for me. Anybody else out there in the interwebs? I love the fact that I've never seen anything from Periscope. So I know I don't have that much reach, but I'm going to be just blown away the first day I see someone respond on Periscope. Absolutely, Matthew. Great first name, by the way. Matthew. It's my son's name. What else? Any other questions? What's everybody looking forward to over the next few weeks? I'm looking forward to it getting warmer. And Hannah asks, are there any in-person opportunities coming up in San Diego? Not that I'm aware of. I think everybody's still kind of trying to play it safe with COVID. I know that the Sending of JavaScript as a group, we're not scheduling anything in person. I think we're not even really having a conversation about when we're going to do that yet. It just seems like there's a lot of inherent risk involved in that with very little upside reward. So that's my take. But I'm looking forward to when it will be safe to do so. Hello, FinSOU FS, maybe. Twitch is alive and kicking. I love it. Hello, Twitch. Anybody else have any questions? We do this every week. So again, 12 o'clock Pacific. This is a regular thing, so you can mark your calendars. Sometimes I forget to make the little comment thing on LinkedIn so that it appears for people to see, but this happens every week. So I feel like maybe I'll stand up a web page. Does that seem like a good idea? Drop me a comment if you think a web page would help make it easier for people to know when this is happening, or easier for people to spread the word. If you had a link that you could give to someone, would that be helpful? Is that a helpful thing? I feel like we got a lot of people on LinkedIn, and maybe it's just they happen to be on LinkedIn. So they happen to see it while we're on LinkedIn. We have a few people that respond every week. So maybe it's a thing that once you figure it out, you get on it. I'm not sure. But I'm here every week, so I'll keep shouting into the interwebs. Aaron asks, looking forward to starting some seeds indoors. Hoping to grow lots of tomatoes. That's something to look forward to. I like that. Seeds indoors. I haven't grown anything since I was like a child. So maybe I'll give it a try. Maybe do some gardening. Although we have a lot of rabbits out here, and I think they would just tear up anything that I put out there. They tear up the lawn. So I've just stopped trying. They literally will eat the lawn down to the roots. Good question, Jason. What is the status of tech equity for formerly incarcerated people? Well, I think it's just as challenging for people that have been formerly incarcerated as it is for folks that are a non-white or Asian male. I would kind of say they're in the same boat. The large number of folks fit that demographic. So if you're a woman, if you're a person of color, if you are formerly incarcerated, odds are it is going to be rare for you to see someone that looks like you inside of a tech company. That's the reality. Why we're there, it's got a lot of different causes. There's a lot of different reasons. So we look at, women enter CS programs at almost the same percentage as males. They enter 4-year CS degree programs, but far fewer of them graduate from the programs than enter. So something happens there during that 4-year experience. I tend to think that this is a space that is not friendly and it's not easy for the folks that are, it's not as inclusive. I think would be the best way to describe it. It is not as inclusive of an environment for folks that don't fit that demographic. So the positive news for formerly incarcerated people is many companies, especially small startup companies, even companies as large as maybe mid-market, small companies all the way up to mid-market companies, don't really care about former convictions, given that they're not, violent crimes, things like that. There's always going to be a stigma associated with formerly incarcerated that were convicted of like violent or dangerous crimes. So that being said, much of the industry is really about having experience. They want to know the more experience, the easier it is for you to find a job. If you're a senior engineer, doesn't matter, you will be able to find employment. So I think there are some great opportunities to get better at serving a population of people that are formerly incarcerated. I'm personally involved in a few discussions about reentry programs, and so it's very close to what I'd like to be working on and helping with, but I don't think it's significantly more challenging than really the rest of who I'm trying to help and serve. So the good news is it's not as challenging of a problem as it is for us to just solve getting more women into roles, getting more Black, Latinx, LGBTQ, neurodiverse. I would say it's about the same level, if not a non-issue. And like companies don't care. They don't even do background checks. There's a lot of them that don't do any background check. And in California, I don't even think you can ask someone if they've been convicted anymore. There's some kind of rule about that now. I've never asked because it's not important to what we do. So that's my take on that. I think it will improve, but as is always, it is a unique challenge, but to a much lesser degree in the population as a whole than any of the other challenges that are outside of the heterogeneous population of white or Asian males that are inside of tech companies in massive numbers. I'd say somewhere around 80% between the two. Asian or white male is like super high. So the follow-up to that question, Jason, is this initiative being discussed? Sure. I know lots of really great programs that are focused on this. Again, I'm currently working on some reentry programs and love to chat with you offline if this is something that's interesting to you. There are a variety of different folks that are trying to tackle it from inside, from when they are released and re-entering. So the formerly incarcerated, the currently incarcerated. So I think there's a massive opportunity to give people a true high wage opportunity for them to earn a living. And I think a lot of talent is going to waste that we could definitely reskill and get into well-paying jobs that would help to offset sort of the risk of recidivism and challenges that are faced by people that are re-entering. So I know Last Mile is started in San Quentin, but up in a bunch of state prisons here in California. They don't really do any federal institutions that I know of, and they're starting to spread beyond California now. And they're probably the best known program in the country, well-known program, I guess you'd say. And they're great. So they're also great. How do I land a management position in IT? Oh, well, I think because I haven't really depends on if you have a technical background. So if you have a technical background, it's really not that challenging. And so there are lots of opportunities, and they will like bring in people from the outside all the time. So I think you basically just want to look for postings, and if you have relevant experience in the technology stack, that's helpful, because usually the way that they like to see the experience is they like to see someone that was a software engineer for a while and then transitioned into leadership roles, and then exclusively is like on a leadership path and no longer on like a hands-on engineering path. But it's rare that someone will come into the industry with no technical experience and then start leading technical teams. But there's lots of roles that are not as technical in nature in the IT space. So as an example, you might come in as Scrum Master, or you might come in as a project manager, right? And those require leadership, but not necessarily the same technical acumen. And so I think you can get into those roles fairly easily compared to when they want someone that's like maybe a program manager or someone that has direct management over the actual engineers. Usually they want to see them coming through the engineering track. So the way you'd land it is depending on your experience. So if you have some existing experience, I don't think it's a good idea for you to try and learn enough coding and think that if I learn enough coding, I can then like lead software engineers. It's way too hard. And I don't think you have a chance of success if you're learning to code for anything other than knowing how to code and actually being able to execute it, because it's such an exceedingly difficult skill to learn that it only makes sense to learn if you truly are doing it for that purpose and not as a secondary thing. Like, oh, once I learn how to code, then I'll be able to manage people better. It's like, nope, you'll never get there. You'll never learn enough. It's really something that takes a long time and massive effort. Instead, I would focus exclusively on what are some roles that allow you to exercise your capacity as a leader to do forecasting and to be a good leader, be a good mentor, and develop people, and management, and be able to actually manage folks. That you should be able to land a role if you have non-technical experience. If you have technical experience, awesome. Then again, look for roles that are specifically like leadership positions and apply for them. I think there's plenty of opportunity there. Very similar to the process that you would use for your first technical role, you're going to need to do the reach outs and the follow-ups. You're going to need to create connections inside of organizations and network with folks inside of organizations. And then once you've connected with someone, then apply for the job and let that person know, hey, I've applied for this role and love it if you put in a good word for me, etc. So it's the same networking process. It's the same job search process. I would just try and find positions, Sean, that you can be able to sort of leverage your existing background, right? Your leadership experience is going to be critical. Everything else is secondary, at least for managers. Master's degree in MIS, no one will give you an opportunity. Well, beyond the master's degree, because master's degree is great. That's like the piece of paper on the wall. What's the experience? And that you have to have. So if you have like a liberal arts degree and then you go get a master's degree in MIS, then yeah, it could be really challenging, because you're going to have to leverage what beyond the master's degree is your experience that makes you a good leader. And then you'll have to further qualify, knowing give you an opportunity. I'm sure there's somebody out there, but it's a numbers game. So it's going to be finding that right fit. And I would definitely encourage you to share more or ask specific questions about, this is what you're doing. You're doing these steps, and this is the result you're getting. Should I continue to do X, or should I try Y? So like anything breaking into this field, it's going to be challenging if you're coming from the outside, for sure. You're welcome, Jason. Appreciate the questions. Aaron asks, if you try and plant anything, I hear strongly scented herbs. Oh, all right, cool. So We can do that. I can do all those. Rosemary, mint, lavender, thyme. I'm about to just plant right around the perimeter of my yard. All of those things. Man, and the first time we pulled up to our home and we saw the rabbits out in the front yard, we thought, oh, for sure, as soon as we open the car door, they're going to just skedaddle. Nope. They just pop their heads up and then look at you like they're Bugs Bunny and just chewing on the grass. And you can get almost close enough to touch them before they'll move away. And there's usually like, I don't know, 3 or 4 at any given time as soon as the sun goes down. There's 3 or 4 rabbits out in the front yard. Just all night. That's all they're doing is mowing the lawn. So I will give those a try. Absolutely, Sean. Please feel free to drop specific questions in here. More than happy to see if there's, a way I can help you make the process go smoother and faster. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't have to be as painful. There's always going to be a certain amount of pain because no one likes like cold prospecting, which is kind of what you're doing in many cases. You are selling, and a lot of people don't like selling, but you're selling yourself. And so it's not real natural for most people to be selling themselves and be doing the prospecting and the cold calling, all those kinds of things that are required for you to be successful to land a first job. You're not going to be able to just like submit your resume and do the one-click applies and have a high degree or chance of success. It's entirely possible, but it's very unlikely. It is much more likely that it's going to require you to do things that make you a little bit uncomfortable and push you out of your comfort zone to get that first opportunity. But if you're willing to just do the steps that I kind of described, you will definitely get there faster. It will take less time, and you'll probably get a better opportunity than if you just try the, spaghetti at the wall shotgun approach to the search, where you just go to Indeed every day and you just click the one click. You're like, all right, I've done 100 a day. I've just applied to all these positions and no one's calling me back. I'm not getting anywhere. It's not effective. If it were, you'd already have a job, right? And so at the end of the day, it's just got to be taking the steps that are going to be the highest yield. So as an example, first thing I tell folks, if you haven't done this already, you're on the job search, is you need to make sure you have a spreadsheet. And on that spreadsheet, you can keep it super simple. It's just the name of the company, the date that you applied, right? Who you've actually contacted at that company, and then what the next follow-up date is, and then some notes. Those are your columns. That's it. That's all that you need to track on the spreadsheet. You don't need a whole bunch of fanciness and details and all that kind of stuff. You just need those pieces. Maybe you want to track the person's email address on there. That's fine, right? So you have a way to be able to every day when you go down that list, see, here's how many I'm doing per week, and you should be doing 10 per week. You want to research the company, know a little bit about them, and then try and connect with someone first before you actually submit your application. And then follow up. Use that as your list to follow up. So when you follow up, you set a date. Set it for like 3 or 4 more days out. Now you'll know that column, the next time you go into a list, if it's beyond that date, then you need to follow up with that person. 10 a week. Should result, if it's your first software engineering role, if you do the process right, it will result in a certain number of phone interviews. Then a certain number of phone interviews will result in a certain number of on-site interviews. And then a certain number of on-site interviews will translate into a job offer. If you're well prepared, it might only take 2 or 3 on-site interviews. By the 3rd on-site interview, if you haven't gotten an offer, there's something broken in your process. You're either applying to the wrong companies, you're blowing something during the interviews, there's something broken. But a lot of our students, it's like the 2nd in-person interview and they get an offer. And so to work backwards and get to those numbers, you just have to kind of do the math. How many phone interviews lead to an interview? And then how many reach outs you have to do to get a phone interview? And then you kind of come up with your metric. If you do a quality job researching companies, really knowing and then reaching out to people in the company, you'll have a much greater chance of getting that phone screening. Because again, the phone screening is like, man, there's a magic formula. This is simple, dead easy. And that is, you connect with someone inside the organization and you then let them know, hey, I saw that you guys are posting this after you've done your networking thing. So it's not the first thing you say to them. But after you've connected with someone, you've had some back and forth dialogue, then you can mention, hey, I actually applied for this open role at your company. And 9 times out of 10, they'll have an employee referral program, or they'll have a process where if that person mentions to HR that you know them, right? If I say I'm working at a company, I say, hey, I know this person, they applied for this job, they automatically, in many cases, will flag that for a phone interview. Because if you think about it, you don't want to disrespect employees that are recommending people. If they recommend someone, you want to try and at least get them a phone screening. Even if it's just a cursory, like, we're just going to do this out of like courtesy because you've recommended this person, but I don't know if they're going to be a great fit. They'll do the phone interview, right? So you'll get that shot more often than not if you're connecting and networking and you're getting someone that's willing to say, oh yeah, I think you'd be a good fit. That's a good job, man. I think you got a shot. You should definitely continue in the application process. And I'll see where you're at and see if, maybe they'll give you a phone interview. There you go. Boom. So that process works. You just have to be willing to do the pain of like reaching out to people and being a human and talking to them. Aaron. Oh yeah. We got a lot of rabbits. Baldo, what do I think about the action of a specific IT niche, even though your company is not using all of this niche? So I think the gist of your question is, should you go after a small niche market in terms of the types of jobs that you're interested in? I think it can be really, really a good strategy. So I tell people all the time, there are so many open COBOL jobs right now. COBOL is super old, but it's used by like all these banks and government entities and like DMVs and like all these they've got all these mainframes that they are not going to replace. They are not going to convert them to like cloud apps. It's not happening, right? And so what's happening is all these people that learn COBOL and have been maintaining these mainframes for all these years, they're retiring. They're coming up on 30 years in, and they're like, peace out. Right? So there's all of these job openings that are not going to just be like, oh, well, I guess we're just going to migrate to like Azure, AWS. That ain't happening. So I think if you have the patience for it and you're willing to, because it's not as exciting and fun, and it doesn't look anything like what you touch and experience when you're looking at apps on the iPhone or you're on your iPad. It doesn't feel the same as like, the slick web interfaces that we're all used to, the user experience. But if you're willing to work in that space, you can find work. COBOL, right? Super old, but there's a wealth of opportunity because not as many people are just interested in that or have awareness of it. And it takes a little bit to like learn because the resources are, much, much, smaller because not as many people are learning it. So I think if you are able to be self-motivated to do something that's sort of outside of the mainstream, you will have a ton of success. Find whatever your passion is. And if it happens that it's like in smaller numbers, I think you're going to be fine. If it just so happens that, you understand something, you can go super deep, that's always a good thing. What I generally suggest is that you will find this across IT, they call it T-shaped experience, where you've got a narrow amount of experience across a lot of different things, and then you have deep knowledge in one thing, and that can be your niche. And your niche could be like, oh man, I really know mainframe systems and like COBOL, but I also understand the fundamentals of software development lifecycle, and here's how you maintain software, and I understand version control and all these other pieces, but I have a deep knowledge of like this thing. That is amazing. If you can structure your career growth to, as quickly as possible, identify what you enjoy as your niche, you're well ahead of the game. That's like, that's pro tip right there. That's pro tip. Good question, Baldo. Yeah. Regardless of what you pick, whether it's working on Azure, whether it's being on databases, whether it's going deep on Java, pick your one, pick what you're willing to go deep on and go deep. And It's good if it's very niche and it's very small. You become like the best Flutter developer that there is out there. You learn Dart and you learn Flutter, and like you're the Dart Flutter person. Awesome. Don't forget the other. You got to be good across the board. You got to understand why it makes sense to build it in Flutter versus building it in like the native iOS or Objective or Swift or Kotlin or Java. So you want to know why. There's that explanation, but it's okay to be that because we're very distributed right now. And there's a lot of opportunity all over the world. So even if there's not a lot of job opportunities right here where you live, it's very easy for you to find on the internet like that person that needs what your specialization is. So don't be afraid of specializing. I think that's a very good strategy. As long as you also have the rest of that tea. You have that top part of the tea. Any other questions? I feel like we covered some good ground today. Yeah, we got gardening and rabbits. Got that. Awesome. So if we get any more questions, I'm happy to hang out here for a little bit longer and see if we get some more questions. If we don't, if nothing else comes through, I'm going to say peace out. I'm going to go have lunch, and then we'll do this again next week. So not seeing any other questions. If anybody has one, you got to drop it in there real quick because we're about to skedaddle. I know you're a few seconds behind me. So if you have a question, comment, throw it in the box. Bala's got another one more study, but not working on it. Oh, no. You got to definitely make sure that you're working on some passion projects. You definitely get some hands-on experience. So whatever that area is, that is your niche that you're interested in, find a way to really be working on projects. They can be short. They can be small. I like short, small projects you can finish in 1 to 2 days. And I don't like as much like doing a ride along where you're watching a video and you're just recreating what's in the video. But I think you should definitely use it, right? I don't think you should take courses and then not apply it. I don't think that gives you a really good chance to synthesize the material and find a way to apply it if you're just sort of like taking the watching courses online or watching videos and not really applying them. So I think that hands-on part is super important. Hopefully that helps. Plus, I think you'll find that you lose the way most human brains work. You lose it really quickly if you don't use it, right? At one point, I could speak a lot of Spanish. I can't speak as much today. It would take me a while to get back into it, get my muscle memory, get my muscles going again. But if you find a way to speak the language, then you'll keep it alive in your mind, and you'll actually get much more proficient and be able to go much deeper. So cool. All right. Well, we'll do this again next week. Please tell all your friends and family. Tell them they got to become software engineers or something in IT. And spread the word. If you think it'll help, drop me a comment. Leave me something that says, hey, it would help if we had a website or if I do something differently. I'm open for feedback. So I just want to help as many people as I possibly can. And there's no strings attached. You didn't have to give me your email. You didn't have to give me your phone number, like none of that stuff. I really do genuinely want to help as many people as I can realize their potential if it's software engineering. I mean, if you want to be the best farmer or gardener, probably not very helpful. That I can assure you. But if you're looking to break into tech, I could probably, give you a few pointers and tips that might be helpful. So let me know. This is definitely the experimental phase of this thing, but I definitely want to find more ways that I can add value for people that are on this journey and trying to figure out like how do they shorten the distance between where they are and that first job. And then eventually where you get the dogs in the office and the catered breakfast and lunch and the beer on tap and the unlimited PTO. That was a good one. The massages, the haircuts, the taxes during tax season. A lot of nice perks in tech, but it is tough. So I want to dispel the folks that, say it's all puppies and cotton candy. It's hard. It's hard to get in. That's why they take such good care of the folks that put in the work and become seasoned veterans that can really get in and can build solutions and solve real problems for businesses. They're well taken care of. But you can do it. I know lots of people have done it before if you want it. Brandon, I believe you are learning to become a software engineer as well. You can do it. I believe. See, I can at least read and somewhat understand what people are saying. But awesome. I'm gonna take off, head out. But yeah, we'll do this next week, same time, 12 o'clock. Later.